Hey gang, it's time for the midweek. Welcome. So, Greg mentioned it this weekend, but in case you didn't hear him, we are going to celebrate communion together on the midweek. It's going to be a really special time together. Now, if you forgot, that's okay. Go grab some elements, something that will suffice for bread and juice. Take your time. I want you to get settled in now, and we'll take communion together at the end. Like I said, this is going to be a special experience that we get to share together here on the midweek. Now, to kind of set the stage, I want to remind you of something that Greg said this weekend. So, once again, take a look.
Okay, you do understand that there are people all over this community, all over your lives, who right now are absolutely convinced that they are essentially invisible. I thought about this, and I can't do it. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I don't want to increase your heartache, maybe my heartache. I'm not doing a show of hands here. But I guarantee you there are people in our midst who are absolutely convinced that nobody sees them. You're in your small group, you're in your recovery group. These are beautiful things, but it's like you feel invisible. You're in your work group at the office. You're in a study group. You're in no group. You're in your family. You're in a marriage. You're like right next to somebody. It's like, I think I've been invisible for years. I am telling you, this is our reality, and I am calling us together, like right now. No more, not on our watch. By the grace of God, no more invisible people. Can we commit to that? Joseph saw people and stuff started to change. Now, listen. I've been privileged to be welcomed into, taught by, loved on several different distinct cultures and communities throughout the continent of Africa. One that I'm barely familiar with and have been welcomed in, but just, I'm not anywhere close to knowing a lot about this, but the Zulu people of Southern Africa. I'll tell you what, I love their word for greeting. It's sawubona. Do you know what it means? I see you. Technically, it means we see you. But if you hear someone from the Zulu nation begin to explain it, they'll say, it's like, I can't even imagine what we could accomplish together until I see you. It's an invitation to a deeper presence. I see you. I recognize you. Wait, there's more to your story. Again, you know, some of you, exactly where this is going because there is a common phrase in our vernacular. I see you. And I got to tell you what, I think it's a really cool one. When somebody says, I see you, I see what you're doing, I see what you tried there, I see you. It's just, it can be a really beautiful, affirming thing. I am not telling you, if it's not in your vernacular, please, I am not telling you, parents, to go up to your 13-year-old tonight and say, hey, Junior, I see you. I mean, if it doesn't naturally flow out of your mouth, don't. But it's still an assignment. Can we see each other? Can we begin to look around and to notice? Again, not because we agree on everything, sometimes precisely because we don't agree on everything. It isn't because somebody's a project and I'm now going to pump you for knowledge so that I can learn everything about your perspective on something. It isn't about winning an argument. We are going to see people. So we ask questions, and then you ask another question, and then you just listen and listen a little bit more, and it begins to dawn on you that the person in front of you is made in the image of God. We just start there. Just start there. I'm not talking about trying to cover really tender ground. Maybe you get to that. I'm just saying, can we, no more invisible people in our midst?
So, can I tell you what I love about that?
Yeah.
I love the I see you, but like he said, it goes along with asking questions and listening. Just to flip it, hey, I see you, and we move on.
It misses the point completely.
Misses the point.
Yeah.
To really, like he said, there's more to your story.
That's right.
And I want to hear it.
Yeah.
And really listening.
Yeah, there's something so, I don't even know what the right word is, but so moving or startling or something about when somebody really notices you that way. You know?
Yeah.
So,
and ask questions to know more and to know more and to know more.
That's right. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Did you get a haircut?
Whenever she says, so I have a question for you.
You know you're in trouble.
That's going nowhere good fast.
No, but we want to acknowledge
I did.
the new look.
I got I did get a haircut. We've talked about what do you think? Did I do okay?
You did great.
It wasn't
Yeah,
me. I
that's
didn't
a
do it. But does it look all right?
Yeah, looks good.
Can I tell you, when my parents saw that I got a haircut, what they said to me?
Did they wish you hadn't gotten your haircut?
They said, Tim, we were trying to figure out if we should confront you and tell you that you needed to get your haircut. That's what they told me.
Like an intervention.
Isn't that just, yeah.
To get-
Isn't that wonderful?
And how old are you? But anyway.
Oh, yeah. I was
doesn't
like,
matter.
well, thanks, Mom and Dad. So, yeah.
So they were talking about you behind your back.
Yeah, they
about-
totally were. But that's all
about
right.
your
They're my
hair.
parents. They're allowed to do that. But yeah.
Looks
so,
good.
Good. Thanks. Thanks for noticing
Yeah,
and seeing
I
my
see,
haircut.
and that's why I
Angela.
wanted to ask the leading question about your haircut.
Yeah, and it was, yeah.
And
it
I
was great.
listened.
Now, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
You and your husband Jim both kind of have a knack for seeing people. You tend to, it's something that, I know you work at it, so I won't say it comes naturally to you, but it's something that's really important to you guys.
Yeah.
And you told us a really, really beautiful story just yesterday about noticing somebody, and it turned into a thing.
It did.
Yeah.
A few years ago, when we could still eat in restaurants without masks on and actually walk up and speak to strangers without terrifying them.
Yeah, remember that?
Back in those
Yeah.
days, we were at McAllister's. And as we're sitting there eating, we looked over and noticed that a woman sitting at the table right across from us she was an older woman, and she was just weeping.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
her food was sitting in front of her, practically untouched, and she was just by herself weeping. And so finally, I just gently walked over and said, "Are you okay?" And she looked up at me and she said, "My husband died 2 weeks ago, and this was our favorite thing to do, was to come to McAllister's and have lunch, and it's my first time that I tried to come back."
Wow.
And so Jim and I ended up sitting with her, and we said, "Tell us about him. Will you just tell us about him? Tell us about your marriage." They'd been married over 60 years, and she lightened as the tears stopped flowing, and she just had the best time telling us about her husband, who she missed.
Yeah, you turned her meal there that was kind of a grieving meal, and I'm sure she was still grieving.
And it blindsided her. Her grief blindsided her.
That's
that
right.
day.
Caught her off guard, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But you turned that into an opportunity for her to remember and to celebrate her husband just by noticing that she was
Right.
weeping.
And to see if she wanted, to talk more, because sometimes you take that risk.
Yeah, yeah.
And people don't want to talk about what's happening, or they don't want to be noticed. Or
She
they
might have
don't-
gone home that day and been like, "Man, these crazy people interrupted my whole lunch and
I
wouldn't
feel like
leave."
she probably did that.
No, I'm sure she didn't.
But to take the risk,
Yeah.
and if you take that risk and someone doesn't, they don't want to talk about it, doesn't mean you don't take the risk the next time you notice and that you see someone. It's important to be seen, and most people are longing to be seen.
That's right. I was telling you earlier that one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, and I was just had written something on this just the other day about Hagar.
Yeah.
Who's this woman in the Old Testament, and she, it's a long story. You just have to go read it in Genesis, but God makes a promise to her that is it's close to the promise He makes to Abraham. Your descendants are going to be too numerous to count, and she gives God a name in that moment. El Roy, you are the God who sees
The God
me.
who sees.
Yeah.
And it was a moment, he saw her in a moment where she had no control,
Right.
no more choices to better her own life, and was completely hopeless.
Yeah, she could not be more of a person on the outside of
Right.
the story. She was not Jewish. She was a woman, and she was a slave who had been mistreated by Sarah. And so she was as outside as you get, and
Yeah.
God sees her.
And God saw her.
Oh, man. Such a cool story.
Such a cool story.
So we want to hear more of these stories. In fact, our interaction question for tonight, what we'd actually love to know is, when was a time when you felt seen? And if you're watching this on Facebook and want to share that in the comments, we'd love to be able to read those stories and celebrate those, because there's something so startling about being noticed by somebody and being invited in. And Angela, I would say that that's a part of how we begin to experience community together, as we notice each other.
That's right.
Especially, when Greg says, you notice that this person standing in front of you is someone who bears the image of God.
That's right. Each
You get
person
invited
you see,
to this
every
community.
person you see
Yeah.
bears the image of God.
That's right.
He even told us to invite someone annoying to coffee.
Yeah.
Did you get invited?
Well, you invited me, and I took offense to it, so no.
But his point was reach out to those you wouldn't normally reach out to.
It was. Yeah,
And
and that's one of the ways that we get to invite people into this community of God.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to do communion together.
We are.
At the end of this. And so if you don't have your elements yet, make sure in the next few minutes you do that.
Yeah.
Even if it's something right out of the cupboard.
Whatever you
Crackers
have will
or-
suffice. But I do want to say this, Angela, because we've had a few people tell us that we've been doing this for a while now, this at-home communion, where it's like we can't all gather together just yet, and so we'll always say that the elements that you use don't matter. You find whatever suffices for bread and juice. God's not going to look down on something because you didn't have regular bread and grape juice or whatever. But I will say this, we're probably going to be at this for a while longer.
Right.
Next time you're at the grocery store, put this on your shopping list. Buy some bread that works for communion and buy some grape juice and put it in the fridge, keep it in the pantry so that when these moments come up, you're prepared. I just think that's a beautiful, intentional way to say during this season, I'm going to be ready to enter into these experiences of communion with my church family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, we're going to do that. But Angela, when we were talking about how we were going to have communion together, we asked our team who helps us put together the midweek each week, what does communion mean to you? What stands out?
And that ended up being the most beautiful conversation.
It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was so good. I know one person said, pause. It's where I get quiet and I just really focus on the fact that this is my moment, with God in that moment. Another person said the cross.
Yeah.
Because she said in all the horrificness of those moments, she goes, it helps me to remember that he probably saw me.
Yeah.
And that is her.
In that moment.
In that moment.
That's
saw
profound.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorites was somebody said communion reminds me that we're broken.
Yeah.
And so it's humbling and it's hard to accept the fact that we're broken, but at the same time, it helps me remember that Jesus said, I see that you're broken. And so now in the midst of your brokenness, my body is going to be broken so that you can heal, so that you can be made whole again.
Yeah.
I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, it's remember, because, they were gathered together on a really important night where they would remember the Passover, where the death angel passed over. And he said, he was telling us to be intentional about remembering what I'm about to do for you.
Yeah. There was so much symbolism there. And then he's just pouring new meaning into it and saying, remember me.
Remember.
So my favorite, the thing I think of when we do communion is something that I think often gets overlooked when it comes to communion, but it's this idea that it's inherent in the word, but it's community. Jesus was actually sitting around a table with his really, really good friends who'd probably become his family in a really real way. And he was saying to them, listen, I've wanted to share this meal with you. In fact, the next time that I take of this bread, I won't take this meal again until I return, until we're together again. And so there's a sense in Jesus's mind that this meal is something we do together. And for centuries now, communion has been something that the family of God shares together around a table. It's a meal around a table. And so it's about community. And that's one of the things I want us to kind of keep in mind as we celebrate communion together today.
Yeah.
And so speaking of community, it just really does go back to that idea of inviting people in and helping people feel seen. And we've already shared some stories about this, but there's one more I want to remind us of. We heard it this weekend. Susie, our friend Susie Calder, who has been on the midweek before, but this weekend she shared her story. And then hopefully you got to see the longer version of that on YouTube that we put out this week. But there's one piece of her story that stands out to me, and I want to remind you of it. So here's Susie's story one more time.
How long into going to church did you get the courage to stay afterwards and talk to the pastor?
I don't know. I honestly have the timeline of all of that is very blurry.
Because of drugs, it's a blur?
I guess. I guess. So it was just, I don't know what made me feel like try this, because there were so many ways I had tried to get help. I called the student health center and all that to try to get a counseling appointment, and nothing was working.
Wow.
So for whatever reason, I felt strongly like I could try to talk to this pastor.
Okay, so tell the story again. You come come out in and out of church that day going, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? And you finally get the courage. One of the themes of her life, which you keep talking about, is her courage.
It is.
Yeah.
She gets up the courage to walk down and talk to the pastor. So pick up the story there.
So I remember this. I forget, like everything else is blurry, but I remember this. He was gathering up his things to go. Everyone else had cleared out, and I walked up to him and I said, "Can we talk?" And he was gathering up his things and said, "Can we just make an appointment? I don't, I gotta go." And I couldn't say anything because I just felt like the hope just like draining out of me. And then he looked at me and he saw the look on my face and he was like, "Okay, let's go talk."
Yeah.
And changed my life. Yeah.
So Susie's life was changed by this one person who noticed her. And Angela, as we were talking about, like, what are some other stories how can we kind of make this point even further and whatever, we talked and said we think we know who we want to invite on the midweek.
Well, I decided to invite my very favorite person on the planet, and you said, well,
I said, well, if you get to invite your favorite person, then I'm going to invite my
your
favorite person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so our spouses are here.
Yeah, so we have with us Jim Bice and Kim Bounds, and Jim and Kim and Tim. So we were saying earlier, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong.
That's me.
But you belong, Angela.
Yeah. I can't think of an M name, and
No.
so I'm just going to stick with Angie or Angela.
We were trying to think about it earlier, but I think we covered all the M names
did.
just in this one circle here.
Wasn't one left for me. Kim, Jim, and Tim.
Yeah, sorry to leave you out of that. But this is going to be a great conversation, and I love that we as a couple get to kind of celebrate in communion together as we do this with our family that's watching on the midweek. But but Jim, I'd love to start with you. Thank you so much for taking time to
Thanks
be with
for
us.
asking me to come.
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Jim, Angela's shared a little bit in the past on how some of the work that you did a few years ago in France. This is a big part of your story. But will you just kind of remind us, what was the work that you were doing when you all were living in France?
Primarily, we worked with people who were in the arts community, from every imaginable discipline, from dance to visual art to fashion and photography, and all those people in those creative professions. Yeah. And what we found is that many of those people, they work so hard and they work a lot invisible, because a lot of their work they do alone in their studios, and they're rehearsing and they're drawing and they're doing the work, and they're trying to be seen. Yeah. But that means making it, right? That means being seen. That means getting the part. That means getting the project. And so we would, recognizing that many of those people were alone, they were on the edges of the society, of the culture, and if they were artists of faith, they were also sometimes marginalized in their own spiritual communities because they were just a little too creative, didn't color inside the lines.
Right.
And so they needed structure, they needed place. And so we would create places, spaces, events where they could come together and they would see each other and they would be seen. But also then there was personal connections that we had to actually see artists, to visit them, to know that they had an audition, and calling them to see if they got the part or not, or calling them to see how one thing went, showing up backstage or in the little club or in the art show or wherever they were. Yeah. And that was helping them be seen. Somebody knew what I was doing. Somebody saw me. Yeah. They saw me working. They saw me trying. They saw me failing. They saw me succeeding. And so we did that, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, you have told, we've just talked about how it's very connected to your heart and how you're wired, and you feel drawn to the art community. But even as you said that, it's interesting to me because you're right. It's hard for them to get noticed unless their work becomes widely known. And in the art community, there's a lot of artists who their work won't become widely known. Right. That's a tough place to really make it. And so you're saying part of helping them feel seen was being able to value their work.
Right.
This may never end up in a museum or anything like that, but I see what you're doing here. Right,
and to ask questions. Chekhov, the Russian novelist, said that all great fiction starts with questions. And that's, you come towards creative people and artists and you ask them questions. So why, there's all this blue in your work I'm seeing. Tell me about that. What does this mean? Where's that coming from? Help me understand what's behind what you're doing and some of the why. And so, we ask questions and listen and just show up, really. That's a way of helping people be seen.
Yeah. It's amazing. And Angela's told me that, you've said that Jim, his ability to move in close to an artist who's working on something and be able to watch them do their work and ask questions about what they're doing. I mean, it's how God wired you.
Yeah, I love being next to them when they're doing all those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
So were you going to say something?
Yeah, in fact, I just want to mention, as the group's pastor, that he's doing the same work in a lot of ways here, and he's about to start a group, particularly for artistic people.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah, here at the
And
Crossing.
so that can be found on the website.
That's so exciting. So if there's an artist out there who's listening or watching this, they need to get on our website
Yeah.
and plug into Jim's group. Cause
Yeah,
that's,
and even
that's
if
really
they're
cool.
not a working artist, if they do art in the margins of their lives, that's okay. This is a discussion about art and faith.
That's great. Man, that's exciting. And tell us a little bit more, because you're still doing this kind of work even outside of this group that you're forming at the Crossing. This is still something that's a passion area for you. Tell us what you're working on these days.
Yeah, well, still listening, still asking questions. I come alongside creatives and artists, and I do spiritual direction, which is, someone has said that's a life coach for the soul. It's a companionship, really, about how we grow in our relationship with God.
Well, Jim, not to interrupt you, but spiritual direction that's a very age-old, kind of an ancient practice in the church,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah.
That you're participating in.
Yeah, I benefited myself from that, and so I love creating that space where people can ask questions and be silent and understand what God is doing in their lives, and recognizing that it's really some holy times that I get to be a part of.
Yeah.
And I do some coaching with other artists, all Zoom things, but just trying to help artists. We see you. We know that you are. We see you even around the church. We see you 30 minutes on a weekend, but behind that is hours of rehearsal, of work, and we see what you're doing. We notice what you're doing.
Yeah. So for people who are interested in learning more about what you're doing right now, they can just go to your website, right?
They can.
JimBice.com, and
That's
I think
me.
it's going to come up on the screen, so they
Yeah.
can check that out.
Yeah.
That's great. Jim, I just really appreciate you being here, and thanks for letting us have Angela on Tuesday nights.
He's happy.
great.
He's happy to let me go on Tuesday
That means I don't
nights.
have to cook
Don't
on Tuesday
worry,
nights.
That's right.
There you
Whole
go.
other story. But let's talk about Kim. Kim, you love math. It's kind of the other side of the brain, right?
I do love
So
math.
tell us what you do.
So I am an instructional coach for mostly elementary, some middle school mathematics classrooms. So basically what that means is I'm a teacher of teachers who teach math.
Yeah, great. And I love what you were explaining earlier, that, you're just not helping them do stuff down on a paper, that there's a whole thought process behind what helps kids with math.
Yeah, so there's been all this brain research done by people way smarter than me, specifically on conversations in a mathematics classroom. And what these researchers have found is that when we create these spaces for kids to talk about their thinking, and not just first I did this, then I did this, but really that deep thinking of, well, first my brain was thinking this, but then I went this way and then I discovered this. When kids learn how to have those conversations, that our understanding goes from that surface level to that deeper understanding, and our memory moves from short-term memory to long-term memory.
Wow.
And so just by talking, then we have this really cool learning
So
experience.
tell us how you go about that. How do you help them do that?
Well, there's lots of things, and I don't want to bore everybody, but something super simple, hey, turn and talk to your shoulder partner, that just helps to give everybody in the classroom an opportunity to have their voices be heard. Because, I don't know how you were, and well, you talked all the time in school, but
That's true. I do.
but I was the kind of student that if somebody else raised their hand, then oh great, I don't have to think anymore. But if we're talking to our neighbor, then all voices are heard. And then the little twist that I like to do when I'm having, okay, so now tell us about what you talked to your neighbor about, is to say, all right, instead of telling me what you said, tell me what your partner said.
Oh, wow.
And that simple move really teaches the kids to listen to what somebody else is saying and to be able to synthesize what someone else is saying. So not only are we helping kids to learn math at deep levels, we're teaching kids how to really see other people and to hear what they're actually saying.
And that would help them way beyond math.
Absolutely.
I mean, at this point, it all dots kind of connect because it's helping us see each other and really listen to each other. And that is so interesting.
Yeah.
Not all. And by the way, my math teacher did not help me move it into long term.
None of our math teachers did.
It didn't go
That's
over
right.
there.
None of our math
None of
teachers
them did.
Go ahead.
No,
Well,
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, what I love about this conversation
Yeah.
is that we're talking about these different disciplines, and we're seeing that the biblical truth that we looked at this weekend applies
Yeah.
in two very different sets
that
of
interesting?
disciplines,
Yeah.
but also that you guys are taking the lessons you're learning in your areas of discipline and adding these spiritual applications to it of how we live our lives and whatever. And that's what it looks like to live our lives as Christ followers in every area, right? There's a beautiful thing going on here between
Yeah.
what y'all are saying. So
And you also have a story about being seen,
I do.
right? That,
Yes.
that led to faith.
It did. I had transferred my junior year to a new school. I'd actually already known Tim, but we should probably talk about that another night.
That's a whole
longer
nother story.
I started off my junior year breaking my foot on the side of a sidewalk, because what better way to start a new school? So I'm hobbling around on these crutches. I was at lunch in the cafeteria, and these people that I'd met that I thought were my friends started arguing with each other over who had to carry my lunch tray. And it broke my heart. And then here comes Tim at some point that day and says, hey, come with me to this church service, this campus ministry. And I'm going, well, these people don't even want to carry my lunch tray, so, what the heck.
Why not?
So I go with him the next morning, hobble in. He starts introducing me to some people. This girl, hey, nice to meet you. Where are you living? Oh, I live in Mohall. And she goes, Mohall, really? How are you doing your laundry? And what she knew that I had just learned, because I just moved in, was that the elevator did not go all the way down to the basement. And
which is
I was
where
on
the washer and dryer, the laundromat
where
was.
the laundromat was, and I'm on crutches. So, and I hadn't even thought about doing my laundry at this point. I was just trying to get around. But she saw that I had no way to do my laundry, and she was worried about me wearing dirty socks that week and was willing to come in and do that for me. And so here I had these supposed friends who didn't even want to carry my lunch tray. And then this person who turns out she loves Jesus and was willing to serve me,
That's
even
a
though she didn't
great-
even know me.
That's beautiful. And so you were seen,
Absolutely.
and it made a difference. I love that. Yeah.
That is a picture to me of what this community that God is trying to build is supposed to look like, isn't it? That we notice each other, we notice needs, and we try to step in and be able to meet them, and we're actually taking an interest in the things that we're working on, and we're figuring out how what God is teaching us in our lives is applying in the different areas where we're working and living and all of that. And then we get a chance to just create this community where we're encouraging each other, we're living life together, right? We're doing this together. And then it is that community that comes together around the table of communion, right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
So if y'all are ready,
We're ready.
did we leave anything out? I think we're ready for communion, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So wherever you are, grab your bread, grab your cup, and we're going to walk through this. Now, let me just say this. If you're watching this right now and you are still exploring who Jesus is, maybe you've not made the decision yet to make Jesus, the king of your life. You haven't put him on the throne of your life. Keep asking questions, maybe observe what we're doing together. But one of the things I want you to think about is this it's a family meal where people are invited to the table to be a part of the family of God, to participate in this. And all you have to do to be a part of this family is accept this free gift of grace that
Right.
Jesus gives us on the cross. And if you haven't made that decision, then I want to invite you to observe this and pray. Ask God to reveal himself to you. Continue to explore what it might look like to get to a place to where you too are a part of the family of God. But for those of us who are followers of Jesus now, I want us to remember, like Angela said, I want us to remember that on the night Jesus was betrayed, he sat down to a really rich, important meal with a group of his best friends. And he looked at him and he said, listen, I've been looking forward to this. I've wanted to share in this meal with you. But the truth is that whenever you eat this bread, now this bread has a lot of symbolic meaning. And if you guys want to, grab your bread and cup, now's a good time to do that. But Jesus said, this bread has really rich meaning, but from now on, whenever you eat this, I want you to think of this bread as though it were my body, because my body's about to go on to the cross for you, and I'm about to die so that our relationship can be made whole again. And I just don't ever want you to forget what I'm about to do for you. And so, whenever you eat this bread, Jesus says, I want you to remember me. So now we take the bread and we remember.
And then he took the cup. And he said, this is my blood that was shed for you, the blood of the new covenant. And he said, take and drink this, and when you do, remember me. Amen. So thank you for joining us for the midweek. And it has been such an honor to come together with you as a church family, as a community, to take the bread and the cup and to remember what Jesus did for us on the cross. And to remember that we have a God who sees us. So as this music plays that Aaron created just for us, just for these moments, I want to encourage you just to take your time. Spend time praying, spend time just reflecting on what this meant for you. Spend time reflecting on the fact that there is a God who sees you and loves you just as you are. And we love you, and we look forward to seeing you this weekend.